Our next film is Jersey Boys, Clint Eastwood's biopic about the Four Seasons singing group that came to fame in the 1950s. The movie tells the story of Frankie Valli, a lackey-turned-falsetto frontman. But the film does a good job of telling the stories of more than just Valli. We learn as much about Tommy DeVito, a fellow Jersey street kid that takes Frankie under his wing, whether Frankie's up for it or not. Jersey Boys is a prime example of great casting, great performances, and great directing. But it's also a great example of why a director like Martin Scorsese is on another level. A level just a notch above a great director like Eastwood. I liked it, I was entertained, and I definitely recommend Jersey Boys. But it's a very good film, not a great one. 4 out of 5 for me. Now, I know you saw this a couple days ago. I just got out of the theater.
Literally.
Like an hour ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fresh off of it.
Right.
My mind's vivid of it, and I thought it was a good film.
So it was one of those things that when I saw the trailer for it originally, I was kind of indifferent. Like, I could probably see it and like it, but, it wouldn't bring me to tears if I don't get a chance to go see it. And it just happened that it was playing at 4:30. That's when I get off work. I literally work next to the theater, so decided to just go see it after work one day and was actually really surprised by how much I liked it. I am one of those musical people, so give me a good musical
Glee,
and I'm happy. Yeah, Glee
yeah.
all of those movies and shows and things like that. So it was kind of in that sense right up my alley. Admittedly, I have heard the name Frankie Valli. I had never heard of the Four Seasons, so I didn't realize that they were, the same thing. And from the trailer, I knew some of the songs, oh, okay, that's him. So it's not like it was completely unfamiliar to me. It definitely wasn't. I wasn't necessarily the target audience, and that I didn't grow up with that music. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed it. I was kind of surprised to find that it was a Clint Eastwood film, because even knowing that he has been directing in more recent years, I don't think that he's directed something like this. Clint Eastwood to me does not scream musical, director kind of thing. I like how he had kind of a roundabout cameo, and that the characters were watching an old movie that he was in, so that was kind of a cool little thing that they did.
Right.
And after having watched it, I did, look up and get some information, and this was actually a play that's been going on for years and years. So, knowing that, if it's ever somewhere near me, I'd love to actually see it performed on a stage. But, I liked it, liked the story, kind of. I liked that it felt like a true, real kind of biography story. It wasn't, sugar-coated. It showed the trouble that they got in, and the issues that they went through kind of in personal lives as well as a group, and just the ups and downs and everything that comes with the spotlight and fame.
This is an R-rated film that
I was not expecting the language that did happen.
That's what the R rating is for. The R rating is for the language in this film, because there's nothing else in the film that would there are no nudity scenes, no sex scenes, nothing like that. There's an implied murder. There's a lot of implied stuff, but implied doesn't get you an R.
Right.
This is strictly for language, and it could have been cleaned up and made PG-13, and it probably would have appealed to a wider audience. And because I did check out the IMDb message boards before I left for the movie, and one of the first questions was about the swearing in the film, because someone had heard there's about 70 accounts of the F word or the S word, and people were going through there. And again, this was before I had seen the film, because I didn't know anything about it. People were going through and saying, "Oh, there's one here or there. It's it's not bad. It really could be PG-13." Well, after seeing it, no, it couldn't have been PG-13.
Well, and for me, it was a couple of, uses of the S word and things like that, but then it's like there's one point where it's like F this, F that, F.
Yeah, exactly.
And it kind of
comes in
shocked me
clusters.
because it was like so much, but then after that I don't really remember like distinct like, oh, they used that word there, this word here. Once that initial shock wore off, it was like, whatever, that's part of it now.
Right. It comes in clusters, and you'll get a long stretch without anything like that, and then it will come back in a scene where tensions are high, so you might want to say that, yeah, it's used effectively in this film. I don't know if I would go that far, but I don't mind it, because language is the least of my worries. I think it goes, on my moral scale, language is the furthest from my mind. Second is sex, and then the most offensive to me is violence. So it didn't have really any violence. There was, again,
an
implied
fist fight.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, and there was a few instances of Tommy DeVito, Frankie's almost his brother, is not his biological brother, but person who he makes friends with on the
they
street.
almost had like a little mini gang, if you will.
Right, exactly. There's quite a few times where he slaps someone, and that's it.
Yeah.
And actually, the most vicious slapping comes from a movie from the 50s that they're watching on TV.
Yeah, on TV.
Right. So, I mean, there's no violence really at all. It's just the language, and I didn't have a problem with it. I got at times there were, like you said, it was like, oh, okay, they're using it like a ton now. But then after they used it and after you figured out what was going on, it was like, oh, okay, well, they were doing it on purpose to, scam this guy, or they were doing it on purpose because it was a heated situation. So
I think for me, once like all the language was happening, I didn't care, because I'm personally not, I myself curse like a sailor at times, but it was because sitting a few seats down from me were a couple that were like in their 60s, and it just like felt kind of awkward for me, because I'm like, oh my god,
That's another thing, by the way, and since you go to the theaters more than I do before we got this movie pass, which I've mentioned on the show before, but I'm not a big fan of the theater because of
people.
Yeah, I'm very particular about other people ruining my ruining my experience, and tonight was one of those kind of situations, and it was more so innocent, but it's still, there was a guy sitting. Now, when we have a very, very small theater, and all the screening rooms are very, very small, they only fit tops 120, 130 people.
There are a couple of screens that only hold like 50, 60 people, and then there's like 2, maybe 3 bigger ones that hold about 120.
Yeah, exactly. And I was in one of the smaller ones, and it has an aisle right down the middle, and then it has rows of like
4 or 5.
It's more like 6, 7 or something like that.
You were actually in one of the bigger ones. Then.
I went down all the way to the end and on the right. So we get in there, and my preferred default seat is the back on the end on the left side. Not
That's very specific.
the aisle row. Or the aisle side. I like to sit by the aisle in case I have to use the bathroom. I don't like to scoot past anybody. I'd rather have someone scoot past me than me scoot past somebody else. So that was taken, so I took the right side. So that was all good. And it was a good thing I did take the right side, because there was this older couple sitting on the left side, and something even minutely funny would happen, the guy would go,
And for me, there were only a couple of times where it was like
it's not a very funny movie.
Laugh out loud, like maybe 2 or 3 instances. Mostly other things, it was just a chuckle, like, oh my god, he said that, that's awesome.
It's not a funny movie. And in fact, maybe the biggest laugh I got was an inside joke that I don't think anybody in the theater got. And that was when, Joe Pesci is in the film.
Yeah.
Not Joe Pesci himself.
Not the actor himself, but
he's a character.
He actually, I guess, knew these guys way back when and introduced Tommy and Frankie to Bob, who ended up writing for them and joining the group. So.
Right. And there's a moment where he goes...
Which was, like, shocking for me, because I was like, okay, I know that name.
There's a moment where he goes to Bob's house, and... to basically get him down to
It's
check
like,
out
come
Frankie.
meet these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he opens the door and he's like, "Yeah, come on, grab your stuff, let's go." And the guy goes, "That's funny," and he goes, "Funny how?" Like he does in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
And I think I was the only one that caught that because I had to control myself from busting up laughing out loud. But it's not a very funny film, so I just had to bring up that one guy who was very, very
And that
into
is
it.
the
and
unfortunate thing
that's
is, like, you go to the theater to experience, that's how movies are meant to be experienced, in the
Right.
theater on the big screen, and it's unfortunate that people like that can essentially ruin the experience for you.
we just have to build our own
So.
screening room, I guess. That's
I'm down.
anyway. The film itself, like I said, it's a very good film. It's very well directed, but the problems with the film, the reason it didn't get a higher score from me is because I felt that, one, there was just too much that they were trying to get through. There was a
now-
lot of stuff they skipped over.
Mhm.
There's a lot of plot they started and finished but didn't have a middle.
Because
And it
now
was
I
just
had
too
mentioned
much.
to you after I watched it the other day that I felt like there was no clear definition of where we're at in the timeline. We know that he's 16 when we first meet him at the beginning of the film, but then all
That's a
of
big
sudden,
pet peeve of yours, by the way, right? Not knowing exactly where you are in the film.
Yeah, only because I like to kind of have a timeline in my mind, because for me it was, we know that he's 16 at the beginning of the film because it's mentioned, oh, he's 16, cool. But then he meets Mary, the woman that he ends up becoming married to. How much time has passed then all of a sudden we see him and he's got, a child who's like 4 or 5, maybe a little bit older. It's like, wait, like, how many years have passed here? Because it just makes it seem like it's, a matter of months or so.
Right.
So it's
and
just kind of weird. And then at one point, they jump back 2 years, and then, now they're back at present day. So it got a little bit confusing in that sense.
And they jump back.
And I don't know if it's because I wasn't paying close enough attention or not.
I don't think it necessarily gets it does get a little confusing because what they do is they're well along in their story here. I would guesstimate probably 4 to 6 years along in their story, maybe even more than that, and they jump back 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they jump back
Because
to
they are
where
referring to some trouble that Tommy DeVito is experiencing, and they're, saying this has been brewing for a while, and then it jumps back to 2 years to
right.
show.
And I can
kind of when it-
understand jumping back for something really important, but to me, what they jumped back for was
Yeah,
not
I don't
really
feel-
important.
I mean, it did kind of set up the whole thing about how much debt Tommy was in, and how that did kind of help spiral them.
But when you he's in a lot of debt though. He's in over 150 grand by the end of the movie.
No, because at the end of the movie, he mentions that he also borrowed.
Oh yeah,
$500,000
yeah.
From
No,
the tax
okay,
account.
almost $1 million in debt.
Yeah.
Okay, and this thing that they jumped back for was $120 debt to
Yeah, for skipping out
Holiday
on
Inn.
a hotel.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
really?
So they go to jail, and I guess that's supposed to create the tension of Bob not trusting Tommy. And so the band members, not trusting each other, that's like the base of it, I guess. But they're not really that big of friends to begin with, so what kind of trust is there anyway?
Mm-hmm.
The only two that really should have any trust, and even that's shaky, is Frankie and Tommy.
But see, and I didn't feel that way, because I'm, like, actually surprised that Frankie wanted to bail Tommy out. Like, I get it in the sense of, like, we're family, we gotta take care of each other. I understood that whole theory. But it kind of actually pissed me off that it's like, after all that he has put you through, you're really going to bail him out of this much money?
Right, but that was set up by and that's another thing we'll talk about, but that was set up by the guy talking to the camera saying, if you think he would just let him, die or whatever, you're not from Jersey.
Right,
Okay.
which true, I'm not. I'm a Cali girl.
Exactly. We're very removed from this situation. But I think that also interests us more because we don't know about it.
Yeah, it's not stuff, from our own backyard.
One of the techniques that Mr. Eastwood used was instead of having a narrator, like in Goodfellas, and I really compare this movie to Goodfellas. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know, but that's what really is coming to my mind. In Goodfellas, you have Ray Liotta talking over narrating, and you actually even get narration from other guys. You get narration from Joe Pesci's character, and instead of a narration over the top of things, we get narration in scene, and the guys will just turn to the camera and talk to the camera. I hated this.
Really?
I absolutely hated this. It was a way to go, and I can't fault you for trying something like that.
We have to also realize, though, that that's directly adapted from the stage version.
Okay, I didn't know that.
That's what they do in the production.
I didn't know that. With all due respect to the stage version, that sucks. Don't do that. The only positive I know that it brought to the film was that it helped with not having to... it helped with timeline a bit, because when you get this, it's okay, this guy is narrating at this age instead of, it's like in Goodfellas, Ray Liotta narrating after everything's done. You know, he's narrating back, looking at a story. Instead, we're getting narration from that point in the story. But even then, that was kind of confusing. I just didn't like it. And especially at the end, when they all gave their little monologue speeches at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And I feel like that particular thing was ruined because it went with Nicky, Tommy, Frankie, Bob, back to Nicky, Tommy,
Right.
Frankie. Like, I feel like Frankie's thing that he said should have been the end of the film.
Right.
His first of those two monologues. Although Bob's, added a little bit of humor.
Right.
But I didn't mind it because I felt that certain parts of it were done really well. Like when Tommy's walking around at the beginning and just looking at the camera, and then you talk to somebody else and looks at the camera, I felt that was stupid. But there's one part where, and I can't remember which of the members it was, but they're actually on stage and performing, and then he turns and talks to the camera, and you still see the other guys are
Nicky,
still...
he does a lot of the on-stage stuff.
They're still doing their swaying back and forth, and you can still hear they're harmonizing still. So I felt that was kind of cool because...
Technically, it was very skillfully done.
Yeah, it was really well done in that sense.
Right. And again, that's one thing, but at the same time, you also have to understand what works and what doesn't, in the sense of what moviegoers are seeing looking up at the screen and whether or not they're going to buy that or not. So again, it was a way to go.
Because back to the stage version, it was supposed to, they were the 4 seasons, so it's supposed to be in the stage version, each of the members narrates a season. Right. So that kind of helps with that. But I don't feel like they really did it like that, because there were some... Tommy is narrating at the beginning, some part in the middle.
But that works on stage. It doesn't work in the movie.
But I'm just saying that I think that was their intention,
right,
is to keep it, going without having to completely do a new script and screenplay.
On stage, you got a lot of one-man shows. I mean, that is Broadway in a sense. That's them talking to the audience, and a lot of people are skilled actors for it. But on the movie theater screen, you're breaking the fourth wall, which is a big no-no. Talking to the audience.
Do you feel it would have been better if it had been voiceover narration?
I think it would have. It wouldn't have. It wouldn't have annoyed me as much. I don't know if it would have made the film better though, because the film, and I'll bring this back to Scorsese. Scorsese, when he makes his film, very stylized, and
you're watching one of his films.
He has. It's an art for him, and this is an art too, but at the same time, it's very straightforward. Eastwood does it very straightforward. I mean, it was almost, there was no trick shots really. The only really stylistic shot that I remember in the film is when they're performing for TV, and you see, it's the first time they're performing for TV on the American Bandstand, and you see in the shot Frankie on stage doing his thing, and you also see the monitor of Frankie doing his thing.
Because the camera's behind the
camera. Right, exactly. And even that's not very groundbreaking at all.
Right.
So, and again, it doesn't take too many risks in that sense. The risks it does take is the narration, to the audience, which I didn't like. So, unfortunately, it misses, and it's just kind of bland throughout the film. But the thing that makes this really good is the performances. That's the biggest thing about this film, is the performances, which you can argue you go to a movie and that's what you want to see the most of is the performance. And I don't know the actors' names.
Well, the actor who played Frankie Valli has actually played the role of Frankie Valli in the stage version for on and off for the last 7 years.
There you go.
So, like, to me, that is awesome because he is Frankie Valli. And I actually watched an interview with him, and he said that, you know, he actually met with the real Frankie Valli and they talked and everything, and he loved being able to play him in the film because he was able to bring more things that he knew about his personality to the film version that
He's a
he
good
can't
actor.
Portray on stage.
He's a very good actor.
And okay, I have to ask you, how old do you think he is?
I'd say 32.
He's 38. Like, it just surprised me because I don't feel like he looked it, and I think that I
Definitely
definitely
not in
did.
the beginning of the
I did not
film.
buy him as a 16-year-old. Like, I figured he was like in his mid-20s playing a 16-year-old.
I was able to buy him throughout the film. Like,
but I was not expecting that he's
he
almost
didn't
40.
change that much.
So,
But also, I don't know if you felt this way, but I certainly did. I could see him in a number of different other biopic roles. Like, he looked like, what was his name? Steve Perry from Journey, the lead singer of Journey. He could probably play him because he looked like him, and I'm betting he can sing like him too.
I mean, yeah, if he can pull off,
right, exactly,
you know, Frankie Valli with that falsetto, then I'm sure that he could, you know, do other stuff. Because that was another thing is I was wondering, is that his real voice? But in the interview, he's got a normal voice, and he said it's just like using an accent for a role. That is not my real voice. That was an accent that I affected.
Right.
So, like, you know, he blew me away. He was just, I feel like he was really great.
I could also.
I would actually be very disappointed if you know, this film didn't receive some sort of nominations and or awards.
Yeah.
For,
awards, performances. Yeah, probably. I could also see him playing Davy Jones from the Partridge Family, Sir Reginald Fairfield, especially with the haircut he gets in the 70s and everything.
Yeah.
You know, there's a couple other ones, but you know, he's a good actor.
And I think that was kind of a fun thing with the film is because I was born in the late 80s, grew up in the 90s, and the, you know,
neither of us. This is not our.
So yeah, so I mean, it was fun to have another film getting to see, you know, the 60s and 70s, and you know, the outfits and the hair and, you know, all of that. So
right,
because again, that sort of stuff is my interest.
Yeah, and since it's a period piece, you look at stuff like the vehicles and you look at the settings, and all that was great.
Yeah, because you want it to actually fit.
Right. There was actually a very impressive shot they had. They were about to go check on the status of the demos that they sent out, and you get a shot of the street, and I'm pretty sure it's New York where they are, and you get a shot. It looks like maybe Times Square in the 50s. I don't like New York. That's well documented, but I do like the idea of New York in the 50s, where advertising was still there and everything. It's still here today or whatever, but it's
not in your face.
Very
down
cool
your throat.
advertising. It's very, you know, it's all hand painted.
And I have to
stuff.
ask, talking about the demo, you know, when they're knocking door to door, and then Bob Crew, the flamboyant guy who, you know, helps them get their break.
Right.
Whoever that actor is, I thought that he was like great in that role, and that character to me was just like awesome. And
he brought a lot of liveliness to an otherwise. I mean, it's dominated by Jersey boys, right? Obviously,
so
you've got a
you
lot
know,
of Guido accents and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
and essentially they are associated with the mob in some capacity. You know, they've gotten in with a well-known mob boss who kind of is like their confidant and their fairy godmother, keeping him out of trouble and helping out as needed. But yeah, overall I really liked it, but I would say that for me, I would probably only give it a 3.5.
Okay.
Because it was great and everything. There were just some little things that kind of got to me. Like I said, to me, it felt like there wasn't consistency with the timeline, and it left me a little bit confused. But maybe that's something that would have been, you know, easily clarified if I had seen it a second time, something like that. But overall, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I did like all the music in there. You know, I realized this whole time we haven't actually talked about any of the music. Again, the actor who played Frankie Valli, his voice is like on par. Everybody in that film did their own singing, so it was really cool to hear, you know, some of the songs that, not again that I grew up with or anything, but that I grew up hearing because my parents played them or whatever. So
Right.
Sherry and Big Girls Don't Cry, Walk Like a Man, you know, those are songs that I actually recognize and, you know, knew some of the words to. Some of the other songs that were in the film were new to me, but, you know, I enjoy them all the same.
Well, that was a hard thing to balance was the music in the film, and I thought there was too much of it, to be quite honest with you. It borderlines musical.
Cause see, I almost thought like there wasn't enough, because to me it's a movie about this group, this band, you know, making a name for themselves, and like the first third of the film is like one song.
Well, I think that we can go and we can listen to the music anytime we want.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can hear the song. We don't need to hear the whole song being played out by these guys. In that sense, I felt like it was a musical, because you don't see a whole song, let alone 4, 5, 6 whole songs sung during the entire movie. And so
in a musical you do.
In a musical you do, right. That's what I'm saying. It's that it was a musical for me, because
that's kind of the point, though.
kind of. The way I saw it was that I'd much rather see the backstory and go listen to the songs on my own. I'd much rather see the
so you
stuff
would have been
that they cut
happier
out.
if they had just done like
There must be another
chorus.
There must be another hour and a half of this film on the cutting room floor, because there were sections missing. How about with his daughter, where
I was really disappointed by that. I even had to come home and like start Googling and stuff, trying to like find out what happened, and evidently his daughter died of a drug overdose.
right, exactly,
But they didn't really touch on that. I mean, there's a passing comment about her and a bottle of pills, but that's kind of it.
Yeah, well, here's a good thing and a bad thing I'll lay down for that whole relationship with his daughter. Number one, the good thing is that they did a good job of connecting that relationship with one of his songs that he sings. And so, for that, you know, putting his daughter to bed, singing to her, what was the song? I don't recall. Something about yeah, that's it.
But I never laid a hand upon, which that song, like, I didn't get, because to me it almost, my eyes adored you, but I never laid a hand upon you. Like, the phrasing of it made it sound like I never hit you. So
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
that's
I know
old.
that
I
wasn't
mean, that's
the
old
intention.
school. Yeah, that's old school.
So-
I mean, the song to me was meant to signify that he's away all the time, but even though
Yeah.
he's away,
I mean, like, I totally got it as that,
Yeah.
but it was just like
So-
kind of what?
the thing is, like, he puts her to bed. He tells her, you know, I'm on the road, blah blah blah, and you know, the mom's a total drunk and everything, and you know, she's not fit to be a parent, really, from what we see at least.
Mm-hmm.
And so the daughter later on, when she gets older, runs away to New York City, and he tracks her down and has a conversation with her about getting her life on the right track and helping her with her singing, her dream to be a singer just like him. But the thing is, there's nothing to set this up. This whole conversation was the first time we heard about any of this, really.
Yeah, like, I was almost expecting, like, is there going to be a father-daughter song? And not only that, but this child, Francine, evidently is the youngest of 3 girls.
Right. So we don't
When I
hear
mentioned
anything really
earlier
about the
that,
other
you
ones.
know, all of a sudden he's got this, like, 4-year-old daughter,
Yeah.
Francine, there's no mention ever of these other 2 girls until
Right.
he's moving out of the home, and it's like, whoa, where'd these other 2 come from?
Right. And then,
So the family part of it was just weird.
well, going back to the daughter, he says, you know, I'm going to set you up with singing
Mm-hmm.
lessons, you're going to do exercises, you're going to eat right,
and
blah,
a
blah, blah.
4-song demo.
Yeah, exactly. And so, again, time passes, but we don't know how much time passes.
Yeah,
And then she
was it a
passes
week?
away.
Was it
We don't
months?
see any of this, him helping her, him setting anything up for her,
Right,
really.
none of
So,
that.
again, that was wasted opportunity that I feel there must have been something shot and just cut out of the film. And
Makes
again,
me curious to see what all the extras will be when
yeah,
the DVD
exactly.
is released.
So I don't know, but we have to talk about the film that we saw. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are troubles with this film. However, there are performances and the way that people are directed, not necessarily the style of the shots of the film, but the way that people are directed is fantastic. And so the performances along with the direction really make this a really good film that kind of overpowers its other problems. Especially the scene, I really like the scene where they're talking about the debt, that Tommy is incurred, and just getting all that sorted out, because it's not all one shot, but it feels like it's all one shot. It feels like you're in there, and you're in there for a long time too.
Yeah,
and everybody's cleaning out their closet at that point, and Nicky's going off about this, and he's shouting. He's giving a very powerful
That for me
performance.
was actually kind of a funny scene, because he's like ranting and raving about having been this guy's roommate for the last 10 years and how he goes through freaking towels.
Right.
And it's like,
And
it's
it was
not
a
about
shame.
the towels, but it's,
It was a shame that ended up not being, what he says in the end of the film. That's not really what I didn't really care about that.
But I mean, have you ever been so mad that even though you're intending to talk just about XYZ, all of a sudden the whole alphabet comes out?
Absolutely. And then you have Frankie finally standing up to Tommy and everything. And so that film was really powerful. I think that scene, I was at a 3.5 until that scene. That scene kicked it up to a 4. And the end almost brought it back down to a 3.5, to be quite honest with you.
I feel like they didn't end it right.
It was so weird. They did the monologues, and then they did they went back to their younger form, and but they were still performing with modern people, and they were a modernized version of one of their songs. And then I left. As soon as I saw directed by Clint Eastwood, I left. So I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if you stayed during the credits, but it turned into a musical.
Yeah,
Broadway.
It's the four of them standing under streetlight. They start one of their songs a cappella, and then they are pretty much walking down the street, and like everybody else from the film, from when we first meet them, are there. So his wife Mary, she's in the same outfit and hairstyle as the night that they met, and then you see, all these other people, all these other, whether they were major or minor, people in their lives for their story. Right. They join them on the street as they're walking down the street, and the song is going. And It was weird because literally the song ended, and it was one of those where everybody poses and they're frozen. And like you're waiting for the screen to go black, and you can see that they're blinking. They're breathing. You see their finger twitching, and it's just like that, and it's like kind of like panning across everybody. So you see everybody in their frozen mannequin state, and then finally it goes to a black screen. So it was just kind of like a weird.
There's a couple of weird things like that.
It's a Broadway show that they put on film,
right?
So I feel like there were some flaws with adapting it from.
Especially with some of the relationships on the love side of things. Frankie falling in love with the news reporter, a newspaper reporter.
Yeah, I mean that was.
And then that disappears for a long time, and then all of a sudden you see
she's moving out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It didn't really make any sense. Big flaws there. There were issues with. Again, I just think it was too much they were trying to jam in there. I'd rather prefer them leave stuff out and have it be maybe not 100% true or whatever. But I really enjoyed the performances. I really enjoyed the Joe Pesci stuff. I thought that was fantastic.
Especially
just like the gay character, he was a character who brought a lot of pizzazz to the.
I do like at the end though when they're doing their little last monologue with the Hall of Fame, and Tommy DeVito's like, "I work for Joe Pesci now." Exactly. That was just perfect.
It's a film after I saw I wanted to learn more, so I'll be looking up more.
And that's what I did.
Right.
I spent an evening looking up the Wikipedia pages for Four Seasons, Frankie Valli, Tommy DeVito, looking at pictures of what they look like now and just kind of what they've done throughout the rest of their lives.
So instead of us saying, I never want to experience something like that again, we leave more interested, which is very effective. And
for sure.
I give it a 4 and recommend it. You give it a 3.5 and recommendation?
I do recommend it. This is one, though, that I'm not sure if I would purchase when it comes out. It might be one of those things that if it ends up in the $5 bin at Walmart, I'll pick it up.
Right.
But it's not that I'll necessarily be in line, on release day for. Okay. But I did enjoy it, and I definitely recommend it. So anybody who wants to see it, go do it.